Russia-Ukraine, of course, there's been an awful lot of controversy about the Trump tariff sort of merry-go-round. And a part of that narrative is that both China and Russia can indeed be dealt with by economic means. And I think this is something that we want to look more closely at. Of course, this is on the heels of the report yesterday of an attack in Sumy in northeast Ukraine, which Donald Trump is seen to be speaking out, very much as a horrific and regrettable incident, although it's a bit unclear as to sort of how it happened or what happened. And then we've got the sort of Witkoff and Kellogg duo making overtures about how things could be resolved with rewriting the map and all the rest of it. But ultimately, they keep coming back to the idea that the art of the deal is such that there may be financial control exerted over both China and Russia, either together or separately, in order to bring about the right outcome. Now, just as a prefix to that, I'm just going to show the map of government debt that the International Monetary Fund puts up, just because it's fairly stark that shown in orange is the United States and the United Kingdom, both with a debt of over 100%. And with that in mind, we're now going to go to Moscow, where we're going to hear from Alex Creel, who has been digging into this. And I think my question, first of all, welcome to the programme, Alex, but my question to you is, with this backdrop, what exactly is the likely effect on Russia of any sort of financial or economic play from, in particular, the United States?
Thanks, Charles. So right at the moment, there are 38,000 sanctions against individuals and corporates in Russia. That's a figure calculated by the Kremlin. These sanctions have been in place now for about over 3 years. And in terms of export performance of Russia, the effect has been essentially zero. And it's been zero in dollar terms. But what it's done is it's just shifted trade. All of the trade that went from Russia to Europe is now going from Russia to India, Russia to Turkey, and Russia to China. So I don't know if it's possible to put the chart up, but even without the chart, you can see just the contraction in the red, which is the reduction in trade with Europe, has been completely compensated for by incremental exports to those three countries I mentioned. So net, there's been no impact really on exports from Russia. So at this stage, I think it's fair to say that those things have not worked. And of course, the Russian economy on a GDP level continues to grow. They're revising the number upwards and downwards, but it's somewhere about 4% GDP growth in 2024. So far that hasn't worked. And then also in the other chart shows the leaks in the importing system. So this is just a example where you have Estonia, which is one of the most, at least their political leaders are the most pro-war and anti-peace in Europe. And while they're out sort of warmongering, Estonian businesses are quadrupling the exports that they're making to Russia's neighbors in these CIS countries. So they're now exporting 4 times more to sort of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Armenia than they were before this special military operation started in 2022. So you have you have a porous system of tariffs, of sanctions over imports, and there are ways around it. So in dollar terms, those are not big numbers, going from 5 million euros a month to 20 million euros a month. But again, it indicates the way that the sanctions regime can be bypassed or evaded. So I think there's going to be there won't be taken seriously more threats of sanctions inside Russia, although Russia is also working on trying to undo some of those sanctions, because in any one of these transactions, the buyer is also benefiting. So, in the example of Europe now no longer has access to cheap pipeline Russian gas and is now buying expensive LNG imports from the United States. So, in every one of those transactions, the other side is also losing. So Russia is trying to unfreeze some sanctions on agricultural exports. And that is something that's going to help a lot of countries around the world if that's achieved, to get Russia back onto the SWIFT system for a limited set of transactions.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And I think, it sort of harks back in a way to the opening report today about steel, because obviously it seems that there's a very sort of clumsy effort by the British government to demonize China in some way, even though in actual fact we import over 60% of our own steel. But nonetheless, there is this sense of trying to apply some sort of pressure on China. To what extent do you think these policies, discussions, all the rest of it are actually pushing Russia and China towards one another?
Well, they clearly have done over the since 2022. They're now joined at the hip, which was, of course, always the sort of geostrategic nightmare of that union happening, and now they're very closely put together. And I think, I guess, the rare earth minerals issue is now brought that into focus because China dominates that sector, and if you're fighting with China and with Russia, I mean, fighting politically and economically, then you're also in trouble with things like rare earth minerals. So maybe the idea is to try and split them again, or at least put a little bit of distance between them. It's possible, but I don't think it's going to work at this stage.
And in terms of the United States sort of approach to this, do you think there is naivety or ignorance, or sort of a combination, or something entirely different?
I think it's just an overhang of imperial, a sort of obsession with imperialism. I think in the early 90s, America decided they are the single hegemon and they can dictate all the rules everywhere, all around the world. And I think, things have moved on since then. That, as you said, the debt charts, the differential GDP levels, economic power and vulnerabilities are shifting, but they're still stuck in this single, we are the hegemon and we can dictate terms everywhere to everyone. And at some point that's going to stop working. And I think that's what the last, 20 years has been all about, really. Probably be what the next 20 years is about as well.
Yeah, well, obviously we will wait and see. Alex, thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you'd like to follow more of what Alex does, then the best place to go, I would say, is Substack. There'll be a link to his Substack Thinking Coalition in the show notes, and we'll come back to discuss that more in extra.